Hey everybody, welcome back to Ray's Corner. This is episode 3 and today we're talking about politics. Politics in general. Why you shouldn't believe in them and how to move past it. Let's get this out of the way first off. The beard is gone, the hair is gone. I still have a little bit too much army in me to look too much like a hippie or bearded woodsman as much as I want to. So let's start off with this. I wanted to wait to do this episode until Obama had said his piece at the State of the Union. And I wanted to hear what he'd say. And honestly, I think we already knew. I'm going to act without Congress and write this legislation because I can. If Congress won't act, I'm not willing to work with them anymore. Would you like to know what that says? He called himself an administrator. Okay? That translates directly into dictator. Because he can't come out and say, I'm a dictator. So he has to use other words, which is what he did. When you act on executive orders like he is doing, you are not being bipartisan anymore. Now, you won't even work with your own party. You won't reach across the aisle. You won't even ask for the benefit of the doubt. You are going to ask solely on what you believe. Well, what if what you believe is wrong? What if your political ideology is absolutely horrible? Do we dare ask these questions? A gentleman recently compared the Occupy movement to the Kristallnacht in Germany, the night of the broken glass. He was chastised so bad for it, they brought him basically in front of a tribunal of left-leaning people. This guy is friends with Al Gore. He is hardcore to the left. And he compared Occupy to the Nazis because they vilified the 1% of the population. Now, I'm not saying that some rich people and some bankers don't deserve to be put in jail or hung. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that we are vilifying people we're not sure of what the outcome is going to be. Because it's not just going to be the 1% that pays. Middle class and upper middle class will pay if the rich is going to pay. Trust me, the rich will be in Singapore. And you're going to be looking at that guy down the street with a Mercedes-Benz. If you follow Obama and his cronies, you'll be looking at him and saying, well, he doesn't need that Mercedes. He's this and he's that. He doesn't need it. So we're going to take it by force, by the force and threat of a gun. Just like the government would do. We've covered that before. Don't pay your taxes. IRS and the police come to your door under the threat of a gun and either take you to jail or force you to pay it. Or take your property and seize and auction it off to pay off the fine, right? That happened before Reagan's speech in 1964. So look how far this goes. I can cite 100 cases. But I want you to do that research. That's not on me. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'll show you how, but I'm not going to tell you what. I will only influence your opinion so far as to surmise that you can get to your own opinion by yourself. I will not choose your political ideology. I will not tolerate things like Islam and the progressivism that runs rampant in the country. And by progressive, I don't mean liberal. I'll get to liberals. I mean, think about what he said yesterday. He's going to raise the minimum wage, and I'm not going to go on that, not much anyways, because all the other people are going to do it for me. The only thing I'm going to say is look 2 steps ahead of what happens after you raise the minimum wage. Inflation, again, and again, and again. And yes, it's happening, and the wages haven't kept up with inflation. We all know this. But is the fix federally mandated minimum wages? No. It's not. I implore you to go study economics and the monetary supply and the entire currency system as a whole and really understand economics. Understand how all the pieces fit together. Not just one piece and not just this little piece over here. Look at the big picture. How does every puzzle piece fit into the equation? Are you going to do that? Because I've already done it. And I'm telling you, you won't like what you see. Anyways, back to the liberals. If you are a liberal and you voted for Obama, or you have liberal friends, or you argue with liberals on a daily basis, Here is the definition of liberalism. And mind you, Bing Dictionary and Google Dictionary have already changed the definition of liberalism to fit progressivism. Liberalism is a political philosophy or worldview founded on ideas of liberty and equality. Liberals espouse a wide array of views depending on their understanding of these principles, but generally they support ideas such as free and fair elections, voter ID laws, civil rights, freedom of the press, freedom of religion, free trade, and private property. Does that sound like any modern liberal that you know? No. So you should probably tell them to go look up this definition. Liberalism first became a distinct political movement during the Age of Enlightenment, when it became popular among philosophers and economists in the Western world. Liberalism rejected the notions common at the time of hereditary privilege, state religion, absolute monarchy, and the divine right of kings. The 17th century philosopher John Locke is often credited with founding liberalism as a distinct philosophical tradition. Locke argued that each man has a natural right to life, liberty, and property. Remember, it was life, liberty, and the pursuit of property before it was a pursuit of happiness. Once again, the founding of our country, the signing of the Constitution, you see happiness in there. When most of the founders that we know of have written about pursuit of property, what does that tell you? Everyone has a right to free Prozac and Valium? Come on. And according to the social contract, governments must not violate these rights. Liberals opposed traditional conservatism and sought to replace absolutism government with representative democracy and the rule of law. Seriously. If you're a liberal, reread that. Why don't you figure out what it says? Because that is your political ideology, not this bullshit slung by progressives. Same with you too, Republicans. Don't think I'm just going to pick on them. Progressive, liberal, conservative, constitutionalist, libertarian, socialist, Marxist, Green Party. You have choices. I implore you to go check the definition of each one of those political ideologies. Look at their background, look where they're going. And you better damn well know which one you belong to. Because if you're out there slinging crap out of your mouth and you don't understand what you're saying because you haven't fact-checked it, because you haven't done the research behind it, you probably better keep your mouth shut. So who are you? What are your morals and convictions? Are you sure? Because you damn well better be. We're having arguments with ourselves about topics we have no clue. We're trying to argue laws that should have never been in place, trying to see what the better solution is. Can we find a better resolution? No! That law should never be there. But instead, what do you do with your friends? Over a beer and a football game, you talk about resolutions as if that's going to solve it. You talk about modern America as if this is the way it's always been. Or what about way back when? I love the 50s. I love hot rods. I love greasers. I love rockabilly. But there were very dark periods in history. Yeah, well, the common people could talk to each other without racial segregation. It was pushed throughout the country. We have to remember each period in history. Remember, right now, we are at the culmination of human nature and civil rights and freedom. But the freedom is lacking. It is not there. We are seeing the most amazing things that our generation, the generation before us, and 10 generations before them has seen. But we have to remember, nothing has changed. It's still human nature. It will always be human nature. That's why the Founding Fathers wrote those documents like they did. They wanted each three branches to be so power-hungry they wouldn't let one have more power than they would. Until somebody said, well, let's get together and expand all of our powers. Human nature will never change. It didn't change in Greek times. The Greek times, it didn't change in Roman times. You know? Why do we think it's going to change now? Human nature will always be human nature. And the idea that the progressives have, that somehow because we have TV, the internet, and automobiles, it's changed, is absolute ludicrous. Or absolutely ludicrous. You really can't fathom this kind of system that we have now. Not the constitutional system. We don't have that anymore. We haven't had that for 100 years. Ronald Reagan in 1964 talked about a lot of things that had been already going on for 30 plus years. They raised the debt ceiling 3 times in 12 months before he gave the speech. Does that sound familiar to you people? Well, I hope it does. And I hope you're paying attention, because I guarantee you I will pick apart your favorite politician. Yeah, Rand Paul, I'm looking at you. You're not your father, and you should be. Maybe you should reread his books. Instead of wanting economic freedom zones, how about we have the entire country as an economic freedom zone like it's supposed to be? You're going to introduce legislation, create more bureaucracy. You're going to put another government bureau on the map. And what do we know about government bureaus? Once they're there, they're not going away. Economic freedom zones. Come on, man. Rand Paul is not Ron Paul. And the Tea Party is something you should be looking into. And I'm not talking about Ted Cruz or Mike Lee. Ted Cruz and Mike Lee, I think, could be on the right track, but I'm not sure yet. Because the Tea Party, yeah, it was hijacked by Republicans. If they truly mean what they say, you'll see it. If they ever say things like, well, I have a 7-part plan to introduce legislation to blah, 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 they're wrong. Walk away and walk away fast. They are not who they say they are. The only legislation that should be brought on the table from anybody in the Tea Party are things like, we are shutting down X bureau. We're shutting down X agency. We're taking this law, this law, this law. We're repealing all these laws. That's the only thing that should come out of their mouth. Anything but, they're not with the Tea Party. The Tea Party, remember, was a grassroots movement. I attended the rally in 2008 because I thought, with a name like Tea Party, it would be just that. And it really was a grassroots movement. 2 years later, what happened? Well, we're Republicans now. Bullshit. Come on, dude. Really? Who still buys this shit anymore? Anyways, in order to move ahead in your party, you have to make X amount of dollars for the party, do political favors, co-sponsor this bill, co-sponsor that bill. You might not even know what's in it. That's how a lot of these bills get passed. You wonder why the senator doesn't know what he signed. There it is. Really? Get a clue. Don't believe any politician, especially career politicians. I don't care if they seem like the nicest guy and they got the best haircut you've ever seen. Don't buy a word of it. So when you're moving on, look through it. Look through everything and understand why and how it's happened. And the only way to move on, it's like we were talking about the journey. You have to kind of reach levels of ascension. And once you get there, you will realize what I've realized, what a guy named Jack on the little microphones realized, what even Glenn Beck has realized, Sean Hannity, Mark Levin, Rush Limbaugh have all turned on the Republican Party, the GOP establishment. The voice of the Republican Party was those guys for years. I remember my mother listening to Rush Limbaugh when I was going to an orthodontist appointment at like 13. You know? And they've turned on them? Let's think about that. Democrat, Senator Mark Udall. He's not even going to campaign with Obama when it comes to Colorado. Why is that? And why the hell is he still campaigning? You're a president, jack off. Do your fucking job. bring the blood pressure back down a bit. Anyways, like I said, there's levels of ascension. You'll really start to see who these people are, what they're doing, and why they're doing it. I suggest growing things. We've got a lot of chickens. You'll see some videos on those coming up. We're getting goats, sheep, you know, gardens. I mean, that's the only way that I can think of to move forward. That's the only thing that feels right, you know. To be a good steward of the land is what we have to do. We have to study the soil, study the conditions, and rebuild. Recover and rebuild. That's what we need to do. And if there's going to be some sort of revolution or civil war, guess what? We're going to need to recover and rebuild. So you probably better start learning permaculture now. You probably better get familiar with a guy named Jeff Lawton, spelled Geoff, and another guy named Bill Mollison. They're going to become two very important figures that you should be extremely familiar with. Let's get busy. And with that, I'll leave you guys till next week or whenever I get around to doing the next video. We'll see you soon.